At the end of 1991, the team behind The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past celebrated a successful launch of their latest masterpiece. That same celebrated team, however, was already hard at work on their next project. What started with a simple tech demo grew into an after-hours work project, and by the beginning of 1992, the next entry in the Legend of Zelda series. Unlike past entries though, the next installment in this franchise was going to be on Nintendo's Game Boy, finally giving the Zelda series a portable entry after 3 games. The first handheld Zelda game was never an officially sanctioned project within Nintendo. In fact, the game's origins can be traced back to Kazuaki Morita, a programmer with the Nintendo EAD team who worked on the Mario and Zelda franchises. Morita began working with the Game Boy development kit after hours during the development of A Link to the Past, and quickly came up with the idea of trying to port A Link to the Past to the handheld. Morita's prototype garnered the attention of the higher-ups within the EAD team, and grew into an after-hours project within the department. Takashi Tezuka, the director of A Link to the Past, became involved with the project. Upon completion of A Link to the Past in late 1991, Tezuka approached Nintendo's producers and asked to make the project an official work of the EAD team. Tezuka's request was approved, and the Link to the Past team quickly shifted gears to the Game Boy project. However, the project grew in ambition, with the team opting to create an original title as opposed to a straight port. During early development of the title, Tezuka encouraged his staff to come up with fresh ideas and to avoid certain tropes of the Zelda series. Kensuke Tanaba was brought onto the team as a writer and was given instructions by Tezuka to avoid the setting of Hyrule and the use of series regulars like Princess Zelda. Tanaba came up with the idea of setting the game on an island with a giant egg sitting atop a mountain peak. Tezuka, inspired by the TV series Twin Peaks, wanted to feature a more oddball story with deeply developed characters and a sense of mystery. For the game's script, Yoshiaki Koizumi was brought in after working as an artist and illustrator for A Link to the Past and Super Mario Kart. Link's Awakening served as more than just a slight departure for the series. The title, taking place after the events of A Link to the Past, follows Link as he crashes on Koholint Island. On the island, he meets a young girl named Marin, who takes him back to her village, where he meets many of the game's interesting characters. After recovering his gear, Link sets out on a quest to awaken the Windfish, his only option in finding a way off Koholint and returning to Hyrule. In order to awaken the Windfish, Link must recover 8 musical instruments to play a song that will wake the sleeping giant. The game's focus on plot and the inhabitants of Koholint Island were different than the rather laissez-faire story of A Link to the Past, influencing future games in the series as they focused more and more on story and characters. The game broke the mold in more ways than just its setting and plot. Cameos from the Super Mario Bros. Series made their way into the title, as developers considered the Game Boy project to not be as serious as their console work. Kirby from 1992's Kirby's Dream Land also made a cameo as an in-game enemy. A fishing minigame, designed by Morita himself, made its debut in the Zelda series, as did an in-game trading sequence designed by Tanabe. Link's Awakening once again returned to the top-down style of view used in The Legend of Zelda and A Link to the Past, but included areas designed on a 2D plane, like those in Zelda 2 also made an appearance in the title. With Tezuka in the director's chair once again, production of Link's Awakening progressed swiftly. One major name, however, was largely out of the picture of Link's Awakening's early development. Series creator Shigeru Miyamoto was hard at work on Star Fox for the Super Nintendo during most of 1992 and 1993, allowing the team to stray from many of the game's core ideas even further. Miyamoto stepped into a more active role towards the end of development, serving as a playtester and producer for the project. Link's Awakening was only in development for about 18 months when it hit the Game Boy on June 6, 1993 in Japan. A North American launch followed in August, and a European release came that fall. Link's Awakening was praised upon release and became a bestseller on the Game Boy. Critics praised the game for its depth and console-quality gameplay. In an era defined by short, original products or watered-down console ports, Link's Awakening offered a beefy single-player experience like no other on the handheld. Nintendo Power and Electronic Gaming Monthly both awarded Link's Awakening with the Best Game Boy Game Award during their annual End of the Year awards in 1993. A total of 3.8 million copies of Link's Awakening were sold for the Game Boy, making it the 15th best-selling game for the system. Link's Awakening wouldn't remain out of action for long. In 1998, following the release of Nintendo's new Game Boy Color, Link's Awakening was re-released as Link's Awakening DX. Tezuka returned to the DX team as a supervisor, with Yoshiori Tsukiyama serving as director. The DX version of the game was made with complete color to emphasize the difference between it and the original. Additionally, a new dungeon with puzzles based on color was made for the game, and it included a photo mode and allowed players to print off pictures with the Game Boy printer accessory. Despite being designed for the Game Boy Color, Link's Awakening DX was released on a black cartridge, indicating that it was playable on both the Game Boy Color and original Game Boy. When played on the original system, the photo mode and color-based dungeon are inaccessible. In 2010, Nintendo announced that their upcoming Nintendo 3DS console would feature a virtual console like the Wii and would include Game Boy games like Link's Awakening and Super Mario Land. On June 7, 2011, Link's Awakening DX launched on the 3DS eShop for $5.99 and was the first Game Boy Color to launch on the virtual console. The final re-release of Link's Awakening also serves as the most recent release in the Legend of Zelda series. During the Nintendo Direct, aired in February of 2019, Link's Awakening was announced for the Nintendo Switch. It was a full remake of the original game, with Grezzo, the developers of Ocarina of Time 3D and Majora's Mask 3D, leading on the project. Legend of Zelda Godfather, Eiji Aonuma, served as producer for the title, with many of Grezzo's staff members filling out the higher ranks of creative management. Link's Awakening on the Nintendo Switch brought a new art style to the series called Retro Modern, but kept the same overhead view the 2D Zelda games were known for. Much of the game is a one-to-one remake of the original, with improved visuals and a fully orchestrated soundtrack. The biggest new feature in the remake was Chamber Dungeons, an optional side mode that allowed the player to craft their own Zelda dungeon out of various pre-created pieces. Like the original release, Link's Awakening on the Nintendo Switch was a critical and commercial success when it launched on September 20th, 2019. The game was released digitally on the Nintendo eShop and was available physically with two versions, the standard version of the game and a big box Dreamers edition that housed an art book. A new amiibo, based on Link from the game, was also released on the same day. Critics praised the game for being a modern update to an all-time classic and pointed out the lack of major changes from the original. The only major complaints were tossed at the Chamber Dungeons, which many considered too simplistic to serve as a major gameplay addition. Review scores were positive across the board, and the title managed to be nominated for 2 awards at the 2019 Game Awards for Best Art Style and Best Action Adventure Game. The game is also one of the best-selling titles for the Nintendo Switch. As of the end of 2020, Link's Awakening has sold more than 5.8 million copies on the Nintendo Switch, outselling the original Game Boy release. In many ways, it's hard to imagine what the Legend of Zelda series would look like today if Link's Awakening was never made. Link's Awakening didn't bring forth nearly as many new features as previous games, but it added many core design ideas that future titles would run wild with. Both Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask continued their focus on various towns and an overarching narrative. Future Zelda releases on handhelds continued to use the top-down overhead view like Link's Awakening, with the 2 Oracle games even using the 2D side-scrolling sections for their dungeons. Looking back, Link's Awakening was a watershed moment for the historic franchise. It stuck to the main gameplay loop the Zelda series was becoming known for, while also deviating from the story most of the mainline titles focused on, notably the struggle between Link, Zelda, and Ganon over the Triforce. It's a masterpiece in the gameplay department too. Koholint Island is brimming with both life and character, despite being one of the smallest Zelda maps in the series. The animated openings serve to offer a more cinematic flair, something the 3D games would utilize to fuller effect. Most of all, Link's Awakening is just fun. It's a portable Zelda adventure that packs just as much content as its console counterpart and still plays great today. For me, my first experience with this game came when I got a Nintendo 3DS at the end of 2011. At the time, I was beginning my deep dive into the Legend of Zelda series, and it was the perfect adventure during those winter months. In 2019, I immediately went for the Dreamers edition of Link's Awakening and picked up the amazing looking amiibo to go along with it. I absolutely love this new art style the game implores, and would love additional Zelda games, both new entries or remakes, to feature this toy-like design. Link's Awakening is one of my favorite Zelda games, and easily one of the top 3 2D Zelda games released over the years. Whether you played it on the original Game Boy, experienced it in color on the Game Boy Color or 3DS, or even if you just got to play it on the Nintendo Switch, I think everyone can agree that Link's Awakening is more than just Zelda on a handheld. It's a masterpiece of game design, and, simply put, one of the best games ever made for the Game Boy line of systems. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like and share it on your favorite social media sites. In the comments below, I want to know your thoughts or memories on Link's Awakening, whether it's the original, the DX release, or the Switch remake. Subscribe to catch the next video as soon as it releases. In the next part, we'll be taking a look at the first 3D title in the series and one of the most iconic games ever made, The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time.